If you just pulled your hamstring running, you might be debating whether you should start stretching it or strengthening it. But one of these approaches returns athletes back to sport twice as fast, with stretching taking around 51 days to return back to sport, while a strengthening-based approach takes around 28 days. In this video, we'll go over the strengthening exercises that'll speed up your recovery process step by step. The first exercise is called the extender, and you'll begin by lying on your back, holding the injured hamstring at around 90 degrees. Then slowly extend the knees, stopping just before you start to experience any pain. These are performed for 3 sets of 12 repetitions twice per day. The aim here is to begin this exercise 5 days after the original injury, and the extender is just a gentle way to start loading the hamstring early after the injury. The second exercise is called the diver, and it starts in a standing position. Stand on the injured leg with a slight bend in the knee around 10 to 20 degrees. Then reach forward like you're diving into a pool. At the same time, lift the non-injured leg back behind you with the sole of the foot pointing up towards the ceiling. These are generally performed once every other day, 3 sets of 6 repetitions. The diver starts to load the hamstring more, which is key for a safe return to running. When starting this exercise, the range of motion might be more limited, so you want to start with what is tolerated and then gradually increase the movement. Also with this exercise, try to keep the pelvis level and minimize rotation to load the hamstring the most. The final exercise is called the glider, and this also starts in a standing position. You'll need either a furniture slider or a towel for the back leg to be able to slide. Stand with the injured leg in front. When performing this exercise, keep most of your weight on that front heel. Then slowly slide the leg back as far as possible without any pain. At the end, use a chair or something to pull yourself back up to that original starting position. These are performed every 3 days, 3 sets of 4 repetitions. This exercise is the most advanced exercise of all of them. It's a heavy eccentric muscle contraction, really aimed to build up the strength of that hamstring. So again, right after the injury, the range of motion might be quite limited, so just go as far back as you feel like you can tolerate, and then gradually build up from there. And now that you know the exercises, here's a couple of additional points to help speed up your recovery process. The first is that if majority of the pain is on the upper portion of the hamstring, or if there's a lot of bruising, this typically means that the recovery process is going to take a little bit longer. So if that's the case, you're probably going to need to be a little bit more patient in the recovery process, especially because you don't want to rush returning back to sport, suffering another injury, and then just having to start the whole process all over again. The second point is that although strengthening was more effective, the stretching-based program also was effective as well. The key decision here is to pick the approach that you feel most comfortable and confident in performing. Even though the strengthening-based approach was more effective, if you don't feel comfortable loading the hamstring, then you're probably not going to do it as much as you need to, and you're not going to get as much out of the program. So pick the approach that you feel most comfortable with that you're going to perform for 8 to 12 weeks. With that being said, the final point is that strengthening is going to be needed at some point in the rehab program. So regardless of which program you start with, you need to start blending in some strengthening exercises to prevent re-injury. Specifically, you want to add exercises that focus on the eccentric muscle contraction, which is where the hamstring is contracting, but it's actually lengthening at the same time. So this would be like the glider exercise that we showed earlier, or Nordic hamstring curl. And the reason is because this is the mechanism of how the hamstring is typically injured when running. What happens is that as you're running, the hamstrings have to contract eccentrically to slow down the swing phase of the leg before you make contact with the ground. So adding eccentric exercises help to specifically strengthen the hamstring, how they're going to be loaded while running. So hopefully this video on how to rehab hamstring injuries was helpful. If you made it this far in the video, my guess is that you're a pretty serious runner, so you probably want to stay up to date by subscribing to the channel, and then here's another video that you should watch as well.